I am reading this article from my blog, link in the description. Dealing with those who say speaking in tongues is nonsense. Before I get into the article, a quick mention. I have a shop selling t-shirts with custom speaking in tongues quotes. Link is in the description. Some people say speaking in tongues is nonsense. I understand they have their reasons why they claim speaking in tongues is nonsense. I'm writing this article for them. If you are one of them, welcome to the discussion. Two types of people who say speaking in tongues is nonsense. 1. Believers who say speaking in tongues is nonsense. We have people who believe in Jesus Christ but do not believe in speaking in tongues. I know many people in this category. While many of them do not care about speaking in tongues, some of them actively oppose it. Their main point of objection is how speaking in tongues sounds. Well, the Bible has not specified how speaking in tongues should sound. On the day of Pentecost, we know that speaking in tongues made perfect sense because it was actually real human languages. But on the very day of Pentecost, some of those who had the disciples of Jesus speaking in tongues thought they were drunk. This suggests that whatever they were speaking sounded like gibberish. Is that not how drunk people sound? Right from the first incident of speaking in tongues, we see two sides. Those who think it is nonsense and those who embrace it and are left in awe. The trend has continued to this day. Either way, the truth is that speaking in tongues sometimes sounds gibberish and sometimes it is real human languages. I have experienced both scenarios. I know. Therefore, if you are a believer and you believe that speaking in tongues is nonsense because of how it sounds, you better cross-check your beliefs. Also, remember that God uses the foolish things of this world to put to shame the wisdom of the world. The very gospel of Jesus is foolishness to those who are perishing. Speaking in tongues sounding gibberish is not a mistake. God intended for it to sound that way. If you have already believed in Jesus, it is not so hard to move a step further in your faith and embrace the gift of speaking in tongues, is it? 2. Non-believers who say speaking in tongues is nonsense. Speaking in tongues will definitely be nonsense to anyone who does not believe in Jesus. For such a person, believing in Jesus is also nonsense. If you are in this category, I will not waste my time persuading you to embrace speaking in tongues because you can't. Rather, I will advocate that you believe in Jesus. You can only know God through Jesus. God is mysterious and incomprehensible. When Jesus lived on earth, he condensed the nature of God to fit in our understanding. Through Jesus, you can understand the love of God, the thoughts of God, the will of God, etc. After you have believed in Jesus, you will be introduced to the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit came to fulfill the promise that Jesus left us with. He is our guide and our comforter in our walk of salvation. To help us in the walk of salvation, he gives us gifts. There are a variety of gifts, and speaking in tongues is one of them. Speaking in tongues is specifically a gift to help us in communicating. Through the gift of tongues, we communicate with God in prayer, with angels through the tongues of angels, and other men whose languages we do not know. Getting to the point of speaking in tongues has prerequisites. If you meet the prerequisites, you will believe in speaking in tongues. Saying speaking in tongues is nonsense is pointless. There will always be people who oppose speaking in tongues. How do I know this? Because people opposed speaking in tongues on the very first day tongues were ever spoken. Saying speaking in tongues is nonsense doesn't profit you anything. I guarantee you, people will always speak in tongues. You were born when people were speaking in tongues, you live when people are speaking in tongues, and you will die and leave people speaking in tongues. Embarking on a hate mission for the practice of speaking in tongues is a futile endeavor. It is better if you give up calling speaking in tongues nonsense and mind your own business. That way, you may achieve something meaningful in life. What will you benefit if you manage to convince all people that speaking in tongues is nonsense? And of course, you know you can't. You may have valid points in saying speaking in tongues is nonsense, but who cares? I have seen people who do nonsense in the name of speaking in tongues, but I focus on the genuine gift. If there is a fake gift, then there must be a real gift. How can you clone something that doesn't exist? Campaigning that speaking in tongues is nonsense will only drain your strength, but it won't move a needle. Quit it. The devil advocates for people to believe speaking in tongues is nonsense. Speaking in tongues is a gift of the Holy Spirit. The devil does not support the work of the Holy Spirit. He opposes it. How does the devil oppose the gift of speaking in tongues? One of the ways is by inciting people to say speaking in tongues is nonsense. When Jesus came, the devil incited the Jews to reject him, and a significant number of them rejected him. When the Holy Spirit came, the same thing happened. What makes you think the devil doesn't have a scheme to counter the gift of speaking in tongues? You don't have to be a devil worshipper to push the agenda of the devil. You only have to be deceived. There are believers who are deceived that speaking in tongues is nonsense, yet it is a gift from the Holy Spirit to empower them. Don't fall into the deceptive schemes of the devil. The devil will even want you to believe that those who speak in tongues are of the devil. Who doesn't know that wicked old serpent? Stop saying speaking in tongues is nonsense. Dealing with those who say speaking in tongues is nonsense. Conclusion. Speaking in tongues is not nonsense. It is a gift of the Holy Spirit for us. Don't let the devil deceive you. If you have genuine doubts about the babbling that you hear from people, ask for clarification from God. In the end, the only people who benefit are those who speak in tongues. Those who campaign that speaking in tongues is nonsense have no reward. Don't be a fool. Peace.